Olivia Matthews, 35, stared at the invitation in her hands, her stomach twisting into knots. Her sister Vanessa's 10-year wedding anniversary to Robert, the man who was once Olivia's fiancé. The golden embossed letters seemed to mock her, reminding her of a decade of humiliation and whispers. Little did Vanessa know, Olivia wasn't coming to celebrate. She was coming to reveal the truth that would shatter their perfect facade forever. Before I dive into this family revenge drama that changed my life forever, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below. If you enjoy stories about family betrayal and sweet karma, hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for more shocking true stories every week. Trust me, what happened at this anniversary party is something you won't want to miss. 10 years earlier, I had everything I thought I wanted. At 25, I was engaged to Robert Blackwell, a rising star in the tech industry, whose startup had just secured massive funding. We'd been together since college, building our relationship through his struggling years, planning our future meticulously. Robert wasn't just wealthy, he was brilliant, kind, and understood me in ways nobody else ever had. Our wedding was scheduled for the following spring, and we'd already put deposits on a beachfront venue in Malibu. My sister Vanessa was always the perfect one in our family. 2 years younger than me, she somehow managed to outshine me at every turn: homecoming queen, valedictorian, and Miss California runner-up. While I worked hard for my achievements, things seemed to come effortlessly to her. Our parents, particularly our mother, never tried to hide their preference. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" became the soundtrack of my childhood. Despite this, I loved Vanessa and believed she loved me too. We were sisters, after all, bound by blood and shared history. Vanessa had been going through a rough patch when everything fell apart. Her modeling career had stalled, and she'd just broken up with her boyfriend of 3 years. Our mother suggested she stay with me for a few weeks to clear her head. I didn't think twice about it, that's what family does. Robert and I welcomed her into our Los Angeles condo, giving her our guest room with the ocean view. The first signs were subtle: Vanessa lingering in conversations with Robert, wearing increasingly revealing outfits around the apartment, offering to make him breakfast while I rushed off to my job as a marketing executive. I dismissed my unease as paranoia. Surely my own sister wouldn't betray me like that. Robert assured me I was imagining things, that he only had eyes for me. Then came the business trip to New York. Robert needed to meet with investors, and I couldn't go because of a major client presentation. "Take care of each other," I'd said at the airport, kissing him goodbye. I meant it innocently. I had no idea those words would come back to haunt me. The night before Robert was due to return, I received a call from my friend Megan, who worked at the same hotel where Robert was staying. "Olivia, I don't know how to tell you this," she said, her voice shaking. "But Robert checked in with a woman. They've been inseparable the whole time." "I'm so sorry." My heart dropped. There must be some mistake. "He's there for business meetings." "Liv, it's Vanessa. I saw them together in the restaurant. They were intimate." I didn't believe it until Megan texted me a photo. There they were, Robert and my sister, holding hands across a candlelit table, looking into each other's eyes like they were the only people in the world. I recognized the necklace Vanessa was wearing. It was one I'd admired in a jewelry store window, and Robert had said was too expensive, even for an engagement gift. When they returned the next day, I confronted them both. Robert didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. "It just happened, Olivia. We didn't mean to hurt you." Vanessa's response cut deeper. "We can't help who we fall in love with. Robert and I have a connection that you and he never had. If you really love him, you'll want him to be happy." I was evicted from my own life within days. Robert owned our condo, and suddenly my key didn't work. My belongings were packed in boxes, waiting in the lobby. My engagement ring was requested back for closure. The wedding venue deposit was non-refundable, but they kept it anyway, for their own ceremony, just 6 months later. The betrayal wasn't just romantic, it was financial too. I'd invested my savings in Robert's company early on, believing in his vision and our shared future. When I asked about my investment after the breakup, he claimed it was a gift and that I had no legal claim without proper documentation. I couldn't afford the kind of lawyers they could, so I walked away with nothing but emotional scars and financial setbacks that would take years to overcome. What hurt most wasn't losing Robert, it was losing my sister. Blood is supposed to be thicker than water, but Vanessa chose wealth and status over our bond. Our family sided with her, dazzled by Robert's money and the lavish lifestyle he provided. My parents attended their wedding while I spent that day alone in my new studio apartment, surrounded by moving boxes and shattered dreams. For 10 years, I watched from the sidelines as they flaunted their perfect life. Designer clothes, exotic vacations, a mansion in Beverly Hills, and 2 picture-perfect children who barely knew I existed. At family gatherings, Vanessa never missed an opportunity to subtly remind me of what I had lost, not just Robert, but my place in the family hierarchy. Life after the betrayal wasn't easy. I spent the first year in a fog of depression and disbelief, barely able to function. My work suffered, and I eventually lost my marketing job. Friends drifted away, uncomfortable with my constant sadness or worse, taking Vanessa and Robert's side after hearing their version of events. They painted me as the unstable, jealous sister who couldn't accept their true love. The narrative they created was that I had been controlling and career-obsessed, neglecting Robert's needs while Vanessa simply understood him better. Rock bottom came 18 months after the betrayal. I was working at a coffee shop, having been unable to secure another marketing position, largely because Robert had friends throughout the industry who subtly blacklisted me. My apartment was a month behind in rent, and I'd maxed out my credit cards. That night, I stood on the Santa Monica Pier, looking out at the dark water, wondering if anyone would miss me if I disappeared. The buzzing of my phone pulled me back from the edge, literally and figuratively. It was an email from a small digital marketing agency in Seattle. They'd seen my portfolio online and wanted to interview me. Away from Los Angeles. Away from the whispers and pitying looks. Away from running into my sister and ex-fiancé at grocery stores and restaurants. I took it as a sign and moved to Seattle 2 weeks later, taking only what fit in my car. The rain-soaked city became my sanctuary, a place to rebuild myself piece by piece. The new job wasn't glamorous, but my colleagues were kind, and for the first time in months, no one knew my humiliating backstory. Over the next 5 years, I transformed myself professionally and personally. I worked my way up from junior copywriter to creative director. I made genuine friends who knew me for me, not as poor Olivia, or Vanessa's jealous sister. I dated occasionally, though I kept men at a distance, finding it impossible to fully trust again. Meanwhile, I watched Vanessa and Robert's charmed life unfold through social media and family updates. Their company went public, making them multimillionaires overnight. They bought a vacation home in Aspen. Their children, my niece and nephew whom I barely knew, attended prestigious private schools and took tennis lessons from former Olympians. Every Christmas and birthday, I received elaborate gifts from them, designer handbags, expensive wine, spa certificates, each one feeling less like generosity, and more like a trophy being waved in my face. Look what you could have had, each gift seemed to say. I donated most of them to charity. The family dynamics shifted permanently. At my father's 60th birthday party, the first family event I attended after moving back to California, my mother introduced me to her friends as my other daughter, Olivia. She works in, what is it again, dear? Advertisements. 5 minutes later, she proudly announced, and this is Vanessa, my daughter who's married to Robert Blackwell, yes, Robert Blackwell of Blacktech. Their foundation just donated a wing to Children's Hospital. I maintained minimal contact, calling my parents monthly and seeing them perhaps twice a year. I exchanged obligatory birthday and holiday messages with Vanessa, but we hadn't had a real conversation in years. Her messages were always the same, updates about her children's accomplishments, their latest luxury purchase, or charitable contribution, with a cursory, "How are you?" tacked on at the end, rarely acknowledging my responses. 7 years after the betrayal, I finally found professional success on my own terms. I launched my own digital marketing consultancy specializing in ethical tech companies, a direct competitor to Robert's business practices, which I knew firsthand often walked the line of exploitation. My company, Matthews Digital Ethics, gained a reputation for integrity and innovation, earning contracts with startups that prioritized social good over mere profit. It was around this time that I received the first concerning call from my mother. "Have you spoken to Vanessa lately? She seems different." When I pressed for details, she was vague, mentions of arguments overheard during family dinners, Vanessa looking tired and distracted, Robert working increasingly late hours. I dismissed it at first. Their perfect life had to have cracks, everyone's does, but I wasn't interested in their marital problems. Yet over the next 3 years, the reports became more frequent. My father mentioning that Robert had missed my nephew's championship soccer game. My cousin seeing Robert at a restaurant with a young woman who was definitely not Vanessa. Family friends noticing Vanessa drinking more at social gatherings, becoming tearful or combative. I told myself it wasn't my concern. They had made their bed, they could lie in it. But deep down, a small, wounded part of me felt the first stirrings of vindication. Perhaps karma was real after all. Then, 6 months before their 10th anniversary, I received an unexpected call from Vanessa herself. It had been years since we'd spoken directly rather than through terse text messages. "Liv," she said, using my childhood nickname for the first time in a decade, "I'm throwing a big anniversary party. 10 years is a milestone, and I'd really like you to be there." I was speechless. After years of polite estrangement, why now? Family should be together for important occasions, she continued, her voice carrying that familiar note of emotional manipulation. "Mom and Dad would be so happy if you came. And the kids barely know their aunt." "The kids barely know me because you and Robert made sure of that," I replied, surprised by my own directness. There was a pause. "That's not fair, Olivia. You're the one who moved away." The conversation continued in this vein, Vanessa rewriting history, me too exhausted to correct her. In the end, I agreed to think about attending, mostly to end the call. Later that week, I received a formal invitation in the mail. "Celebrate a decade of love," it proclaimed in ornate script, with a professional photograph of Vanessa and Robert looking as perfect as ever. I placed it on my refrigerator, a daily reminder of what I'd lost and what I'd gained. I still hadn't decided whether to attend when the text message arrived that changed everything. The text came from a number I didn't recognize, at 2:17 a.m. on a Tuesday night. "Is this Olivia Matthews? I need to talk to you about your sister and Robert Blackwell. It's important." Normally, I would have ignored such a message, assuming it was spam or a wrong number. But something about the specificity made me pause. I replied the next morning with a cautious, "Who is this?" The response came immediately, "My name is Jasmine Torres. I was Robert's executive assistant until last month. We need to meet in person. I can't say more over text." My first instinct was to delete the message. Whatever drama was happening in Robert and Vanessa's life wasn't my concern. But curiosity, or perhaps something deeper, more intuitive, made me agree to meet Jasmine at a quiet cafe near my office in San Francisco, where I'd relocated my business 2 years earlier. Jasmine was younger than I expected, probably in her late 20s, with an air of professionalism that seemed at odds with her clandestine approach. She recognized me immediately, though we'd never met. "You look like her," she said as I sat down. "Vanessa. But different too." "I've heard that my entire life," I replied dryly. "What's this about, Ms. Torres?" She slid a manila envelope across the table. "I worked for Robert for 3 years. At first, I thought he was brilliant, a visionary. The perfect boss, perfect husband, perfect father. That's the image he projects." I felt a familiar twinge of pain. I'm well aware of the image. 6 months ago, I started noticing discrepancies in the company finances. Small things at first: expense reports that didn't match receipts, consulting fees to companies that didn't seem to exist. When I asked Robert about it, he said it was a special project and not to worry. I shifted uncomfortably. "If you're suggesting Robert is embezzling from his own company, you should go to the board of directors, not his sister-in-law whom he hasn't spoken to in a decade." Jasmine's gaze was unwavering. "It's more complicated than that. The money isn't just disappearing, it's going somewhere specific. To someone specific." She opened the envelope and spread out its contents: bank statements, property records, photographs. As I examined them, the pieces began to fall into place. Robert had been systematically diverting company funds into a separate account for nearly 4 years. That account had been used to purchase a luxury condo in downtown LA, pay for exotic vacations, and fund a lavish lifestyle, not for himself and Vanessa, but for another woman. A woman named Claire Winters who, according to her social media profiles that Jasmine had printed out, had been Robert's personal wellness consultant for the past 5 years. "He's been living a double life," Jasmine explained. "Claire thinks Robert is separated from Vanessa, just waiting for the right time to finalize the divorce. Meanwhile, Vanessa has no idea Claire exists." I sat back, processing this information. "Why are you showing me this? Why not go to Vanessa directly?" Jasmine's expression darkened. "I tried. She blocked my number and reported me to security as a disgruntled employee. Robert told her I was fired for stealing, which is a complete lie. He fired me when he realized I'd discovered his secret accounts. And the board of directors. Robert's best friends from college, plus Vanessa's father. They wouldn't believe me without proof, and Robert made sure I left with none. He threatened to sue me for defamation if I spoke to anyone." I studied the documents again, my marketing mind already analyzing the patterns. "So why come to me? What do you expect me to do with this information?" Jasmine hesitated. "Because you're the only person who knows who Robert really is. And because..." She paused, seeming to choose her words carefully. "I found something else while I was looking through the financial records. Something about your investment in black tech during its startup phase." My attention snapped fully to her. "What about it?" "You invested $75,000, which should have converted to shares worth approximately $4.5 million after the IPO, based on the terms in your original agreement." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. Robert said that was a gift, not an investment. That there was no paperwork. Jasmine pulled out one final document from her bag, this one not a photocopy, but an original, slightly yellowed with age. "He lied. I found this in a locked file cabinet in his private office. It's your original investment agreement, signed by both of you, notarized. He kept it hidden all these years." With shaking hands, I took the document. There it was, proof that I had been not just emotionally betrayed, but financially defrauded. My signature next to Robert's, the notary stamp clear as day. The terms exactly as Jasmine had described. "Why would you risk your career, possibly even legal trouble, to help me?" I asked, still stunned by what I was seeing. Jasmine's expression hardened. "Because what he did to you, to me, to who knows how many others, it's wrong. And because he's still doing it. That money he's spending on Claire. It's not just company funds. He's been systematically draining the joint accounts he shares with Vanessa. Their children's college funds, their retirement accounts. He's setting up for a clean break, leaving Vanessa with nothing but debt and a facade of wealth that could crumble any day. I sat in silence, turning over this new information. My sister, who had stolen my fiancé, my future, my place in the family, was about to experience her own betrayal. Part of me, a dark, wounded part one wasn't proud of, felt a surge of satisfaction. Karma indeed. But another part remembered the little girl, who had once put a bandage on my scraped knee when I fell from my bike. Who had cried when I left for college. Who, despite everything, was still my sister. What exactly do you think I should do with all this? I finally asked. Jasmine gathered the documents and returned them to the envelope, sliding it toward me. That's up to you. Their anniversary party is in 2 weeks. Seems like the perfect opportunity to decide whose side you're really on. As she stood to leave, she placed a business card beside the envelope. My personal number. Call me when you decide. I sat in that cafe for a long time after Jasmine left, the envelope heavy in my hands, heavier still with its implications. The question wasn't just what I would do with this information, but what kind of person I wanted to be. The betrayed sister seeking righteous vengeance. The protector warning Vanessa of impending disaster. Or something else entirely, someone who could rise above the pain of the past to forge a different future. The invitation to the anniversary party, which had seemed like just another opportunity for Vanessa to flaunt her perfect life, now took on new significance. I pulled it from my bag, studying the smiling faces of my sister and the man who had betrayed us both. Celebrate a decade of love, it proclaimed. But what kind of love was built on betrayal, secrecy, and lies? And what would be left when the truth finally came to light? I made my decision. I would attend the party. But what I would do there, that would depend on a series of careful moves I needed to make first. I tucked the envelope into my bag and headed back to my office, my mind already formulating a plan that would change all our lives forever. The invitation had specified black tie optional, but I knew what that meant in Vanessa and Robert's world, designer gowns and custom tuxedos. I hadn't planned to play their game, but as my plan crystallized, I realized appearance would matter. I needed to look like I belonged in their world, not like the bitter outsider they expected. I invested in a midnight blue gown that cost more than my monthly rent, classic, elegant, with just enough edge to make a statement. My hair, normally worn in a practical bob, was styled in loose waves that softened my features and made me look younger, more vulnerable. The overall effect when I looked in the mirror was of someone who had made peace with her past, exactly the impression I wanted to give. The anniversary celebration was being held at the Beverly Hills Hotel, in the same ballroom where they'd had their wedding reception a decade earlier. As my Uber pulled up to the entrance, I felt a momentary urge to tell the driver to keep going, to take me back to the airport and my safe, separate life. But I thought of the documents in my hotel room safe, of Jasmine's revelations, and of the moment 10 years ago when my world had shattered. I stepped out of the car. The party was already in full swing when I arrived, a sea of California's elite mingling beneath crystal chandeliers. I spotted my parents immediately, my father distinguished in his tuxedo, my mother radiant in emerald green. They spotted me at almost the same moment, their expressions a mixture of surprise and cautious pleasure. Olivia. My mother embraced me, the scent of her familiar perfume bringing an unexpected lump to my throat. We weren't sure you'd come. You look beautiful, darling. My father's hug was warmer, less reserved. He'd always been the peacemaker in the family. It's good to see you, kiddo. It's been too long. Work keeps me busy, I said, the standard excuse I'd used for years to minimize family contact. Where are the guests of honor? My mother gestured toward the center of the room, where Vanessa and Robert stood surrounded by admirers. Vanessa was stunning in a white gown that echoed her wedding dress, her hair and makeup flawless. Robert, still handsome at 45, had his arm around her waist in a gesture that appeared loving to anyone who didn't know to look for the subtle tension in his shoulders, the slight distance between their bodies. You should go say hello, my father suggested. Vanessa will be thrilled you're here. I doubted that, but I nodded and made my way through the crowd. Several people did double takes as I passed, those who knew the family story, no doubt wondering at my presence at this celebration of the relationship that had begun with my heartbreak. Vanessa saw me first. Her practiced smile faltered for just a moment before widening. Olivia. You came. She embraced me, a camera-ready hug that didn't quite reach her eyes. I'm so glad you could make it. Robert's reaction was more guarded. Olivia. It's been a long time. He leaned in for an awkward cheek kiss that I tolerated without returning. Congratulations on 10 years, I said, my voice steady. Quite an achievement. The best decision I ever made, Robert replied, squeezing Vanessa's waist. I noticed she didn't lean into his touch. The children are around somewhere, Vanessa said, glancing around the room. They'll be excited to see their aunt. Emma's 12 now, can you believe it? And James is 9. Children conceived while the wounds of his betrayal were still fresh. I'd seen them only in photographs and the occasional video call, strangers who shared my blood. I'd love to catch up with them, I said sincerely. Whatever my feelings about their parents, the children were innocent. I'll find them for you later, Vanessa promised, already looking past me to other guests waiting to offer congratulations. We should catch up properly too. So much has happened. Yes, I agreed, meeting her gaze directly. So much has happened. Something in my tone made her focus on me fully for the first time. Are you okay, Liv? The childhood nickname, used so casually after years of formal distance, nearly broke my composure. I'm fine. Just taking it all in. You've built quite a life for yourselves. Robert, clearly uncomfortable with my prolonged presence, spotted someone across the room. If you'll excuse me, ladies, I need to speak with Senator Wilson. Business never stops, you know. He kissed Vanessa's cheek and moved away, relief evident in his stride. Alone with my sister for the first time in years, I studied her face. Beneath the perfect makeup, I could see signs of strain, fine lines around her eyes that makeup couldn't quite conceal, a tightness to her smile that hadn't been there in earlier photos. How are you really, Vanessa? I asked quietly. Not the social media version. The real one. Her smile faltered again, longer this time. It's my anniversary party, Olivia. I'm wonderful, of course. Of course, I echoed, not pushing further. I should let you greet your other guests. We'll talk later. As I moved away, I felt her eyes following me, a question in them that hadn't been there before. The seed of doubt was planted. Now I needed to water it. The next 2 hours were a careful dance. I mingled politely, accepted congratulations from distant relatives who seemed to have forgotten I was once engaged to the man we were celebrating. I met my niece and nephew, finding in Emma's serious eyes something of myself at that age, a watchfulness that suggested she saw more than the adults around her realized. I observed Robert working the room, noted how he charmed the wives of business associates while keeping his distance from younger, attractive women, too careful, too aware of appearances. I watched Vanessa drink 3 glasses of champagne in quick succession when she thought no one was watching. And I waited for my moment. It came during the toasts. After Robert's father, the best man from their wedding, and Vanessa's maid of honor had all spoken, the MC, a local news anchor, who was apparently a personal friend, asked if anyone else would like to offer congratulations. Before I could reconsider, I was on my feet, champagne glass in hand. A ripple of surprised murmurs swept through the room as I approached the microphone. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw my mother's alarmed expression, my father's worried frown. Robert had gone completely still, his knuckles white around his glass. For those who don't know me, I began, my voice carrying clearly through the now silent ballroom, I'm Olivia Matthews, Vanessa's sister. Many of you might be surprised to see me here tonight. I paused, taking in the sea of faces, some curious, some uncomfortable, some entirely unaware of the complicated history in the room. 10 years is a significant milestone. A decade of building a life together, creating a family, establishing trust. I turned to look directly at Vanessa and Robert. Or at least, the appearance of trust. I saw Vanessa's confusion, the first flicker of alarm in Robert's eyes. My sister and I haven't been close these past 10 years. There are reasons for that, reasons many of you know, others might have heard whispers about. The short version is that Vanessa and Robert's relationship began while he and I were engaged. The room erupted in uncomfortable murmurs. My mother half rose from her seat, clearly intending to stop me, but my father placed a restraining hand on her arm, his expression unreadable. I'm not here tonight to rehash old wounds, I continued, silencing the whispers. I'm here because despite everything, Vanessa is my sister. And sometimes, being family means telling difficult truths. I reached into my clutch and withdrew a folded document, a copy of one of the bank statements Jasmine had provided, showing transfers to Claire Winter's account. I placed it on the small table beside the microphone. Robert, would you like to explain to your wife and guests who Claire Winters is? Or shall I? The color drained from Robert's face. In the stunned silence, I heard Vanessa's sharp intake of breath. What is she talking about, Robert? Vanessa's voice was tight with controlled panic. I continued, my voice steady. Claire Winters. Your husband's girlfriend of 5 years. The woman he bought a condo for in downtown LA. The woman he's been secretly transferring company funds and your personal savings to, preparing for his exit strategy. Robert was on his feet now, moving toward me with fury in his eyes. That's enough, Olivia. You've always been jealous, always wanted to destroy our happiness. Is it true? Vanessa's question cut through his approach, stopping him in his tracks. Her voice was different now, harder, colder. Answer me, Robert. Is what she's saying true? The room held its collective breath. In that moment, looking at my sister's face, I knew I had miscalculated. I hadn't come here for a public humiliation. I'd come for justice, yes, but not like this, not in a way that would humiliate Vanessa along with Robert. Before Robert could answer, I spoke again. I didn't come here to create a scene. I came because I discovered something that you needed to know, Vanessa. We may have our differences, but you deserve to hear this from family, not strangers. I looked around the room at the shocked faces of their friends and associates. Perhaps this isn't the right venue for this conversation. I'd never seen my sister look so pale, so utterly devastated. For a moment, I was transported back to my own moment of discovery 10 years earlier, the world crumbling beneath my feet. Despite everything, my heart ached for her. Everyone, Vanessa said, her voice barely audible at first, then strengthening with resolve, please enjoy the dinner and dancing. My sister, my husband, and I need to have a private conversation. She walked toward the exit with dignity, her back straight, her head high. Robert hesitated, then followed. I gathered the document from the table and moved to join them, passing my parents' table on the way. What have you done? My mother hissed, grabbing my wrist. My father's response surprised me. What needed to be done, Helen? Let her go. The three of us ended up in a small conference room off the main hallway, the sounds of the party a distant murmur behind closed doors. As soon as the door shut, Vanessa rounded on Robert. "Tell me she's lying," she demanded, her voice shaking. "Tell me there's no Claire Winters, no secret condo, no missing money." Robert's defense strategy was immediate and predictable. "Olivia has always wanted to break us up. She never got over the fact that we fell in love. This is her sick revenge fantasy." I opened my clutch again and withdrew more documents, spreading them on the conference table. Bank statements. Property records. Photographs taken by a private investigator I hired after I received this information. And this, I pulled out the original investment agreement Jasmine had given me, proof that Robert defrauded me of $4.5 million 10 years ago by hiding this document and claiming my startup investment was a gift. Robert's face contorted with rage. "You bitch. You've always been pathetic, always the jealous sister. Stop it." Vanessa's sharp command silenced him. She was examining the documents, her hands trembling slightly. "These transfers, these are from our joint account. From the children's college funds." She looked up, her eyes meeting mine. "How did you get these?" "Jasmine Torres. Robert's former executive assistant." Recognition flashed in Vanessa's eyes. The one he said was stealing from the company. "Another lie," I confirmed. "She found the discrepancies in the finances. When she threatened to expose him, he fired her and discredited her." Vanessa turned to Robert, something dangerous hardening in her expression. "Is it true? Don't lie to me, Robert." "Not now." In that moment, watching his carefully constructed world collapse around him, Robert aged before our eyes. The charming, confident facade crumbled, revealing the coward beneath. "It's not what it looks like," he began, the classic defense of the guilty. "Claire is just a friend who needed help. A friend you've been sleeping with for 5 years." Vanessa's voice was ice. "A friend you bought a condo for with our children's college money. The marriage hasn't been working for years, Vanessa, you know that." Robert's true colors were emerging now, the blame shifting, the gaslighting I'd experienced firsthand a decade earlier. "You're always busy with your charity work, always focused on appearances. So this is my fault." Vanessa laughed, a brittle sound with no humor in it. "Just like I suppose it was Olivia's fault when you cheated on her with me." I almost gasped at her acknowledgement, the first time in 10 years she had admitted her role in our painful history. Robert's eyes darted between us, calculating his odds. "This is ridiculous. I'm not standing here being attacked by both of you." He reached for the door handle. "Leave now, and I call the board tonight," I said quietly. "I'm sure they'll be interested in how company funds have been diverted to your girlfriend. The SEC might have questions too." His hand froze on the door handle. "You wouldn't dare. Try me." My voice was steel. "I've waited 10 years for justice, Robert. I'm prepared to wait a little longer while you serve time for fraud and embezzlement. Are you still with me in this family drama? It's about to get even more intense. If you're enjoying this story of betrayal and long-awaited justice, hit that like button right now. I'm curious, have you ever witnessed karma come back around in your own family? Let me know in the comments. Now, let's continue with what happened next in that conference room. The three of us stood frozen in a tableau of broken trust and exposed lies. Robert, cornered and desperate. Vanessa, shattered but standing tall. And me, finally reclaiming my power after a decade in the shadows. "What do you want?" Robert finally asked, his voice flat. "I want what's rightfully mine," I replied. "My $4.5 million investment return, with 10 years of interest. And I want you to come clean to Vanessa about everything, not just Claire, but all of it. The full extent of your financial misdeeds, the lies you've told, the people you've hurt." Robert's jaw tightened. That's blackmail. No, Vanessa interjected, her voice surprisingly steady. It's consequences. Something you've managed to avoid for far too long. Watching my sister stand up to the man who had manipulated us both gave me a strange sense of pride. Despite everything, in this moment, we were united. Two women who had been deceived by the same man, now reclaiming our power together. You have 24 hours, I said. Transfer my rightful investment return to my account, and tell Vanessa everything. Or I go to the board, the SEC, and every financial journalist in the country. Robert's face contorted with fury and fear. You'll regret this, both of you. Vanessa stepped closer to him, her eyes blazing. No, Robert. The only regret here is that I ever believed you loved me more than you loved yourself. With that, she turned and walked out of the conference room, leaving Robert and me alone. You've been planning this for a long time, haven't you? He asked, his voice low with controlled rage. I shook my head. Actually, no. The information found me, not the other way around. But I've been waiting for justice for 10 years. The universe finally delivered. As I moved to follow Vanessa, Robert grabbed my arm. This isn't over. I looked pointedly at his hand until he released me. You're right about that. But it's not going to end the way you think. I left him there, staring after me with hatred in his eyes, and went to find my sister. I found Vanessa in the ladies' room, staring at her reflection in the mirror. Her makeup was still perfect, but her eyes held a storm of emotions. When she saw me enter, she didn't turn away. Did you come here tonight just to destroy me? She asked, her voice remarkably controlled. I shook my head. No. I came to protect you, believe it or not. After everything I did to you. She gave a hollow laugh. Why would you do that? The question hung between us, loaded with a decade of unspoken pain. Because we are sisters, I said simply. And because I know exactly how it feels to have Robert Blackwell rip your life apart. Something in her composure finally cracked. Her shoulders slumped, and she gripped the marble countertop to steady herself. I should have seen it. There were signs. He's very good at hiding who he really is, I said, leaning against the wall. We both fell for it. Vanessa turned to face me fully. I've never apologized to you. Not really. She took a deep breath. I'm sorry, Olivia. What I did, what we did, was unforgivable. The apology I'd waited 10 years to hear landed differently than I'd imagined. Instead of vindication or satisfaction, I felt a complicated mixture of relief and sadness. Why did you do it? I asked, the question that had haunted me for a decade. Was it just because he was wealthy? Because you wanted what was mine? Vanessa closed her eyes briefly. It wasn't that simple. I was jealous of you, yes. You had everything figured out, a great career, a perfect relationship. I was failing at modeling, my boyfriend had cheated on me. When Robert started paying attention to me, it felt validating. So you threw away our relationship for validation from my fiancé. The old hurt flared, surprising me with its intensity. I convinced myself we were in love, she admitted. That what we had was special, different, worth the pain we caused. I was selfish and stupid, and by the time I realized what I'd done, it was too late. The wedding was planned, everyone had taken sides. I couldn't admit I'd made a terrible mistake. And now? I asked. 10 years, 2 children, and a secret girlfriend later, was it worth it? Tears spilled down her cheeks, cutting tracks through her perfect makeup. No. Nothing could be worth losing my sister. The rawness of her admission caught me off guard. After years of maintaining a wall between us, the sudden vulnerability was disorienting. What are you going to do now? I asked, softer now. She straightened her shoulders with renewed determination. First, I'm going back out there to salvage what I can of this farce of an anniversary party. Then I'm calling our family lawyer and changing the locks on every property we own. I couldn't help but smile slightly at her resolve. What about the children? They'll be my priority through all of this, she said firmly. Robert may have been a terrible husband, but I won't let him be an absent father unless he chooses to be. We stood in silence for a moment, two sisters on the brink of very different futures than we'd imagined. Will you come back out with me? Vanessa asked hesitantly. I could use an ally. The word ally struck me, not friend, not sister, but ally. A practical starting point for whatever came next. Of course, I said, offering her a tissue from my clutch. Let's fix your makeup and face this together. When we returned to the ballroom, the party was continuing, though the undercurrent of gossip was palpable. Robert was nowhere to be seen. Our parents hurried over immediately, my mother's face a mask of barely contained panic. What's happening? She demanded in a harsh whisper. Where's Robert? Why did you make a scene, Olivia? Vanessa surprised me by linking her arm through mine. Mom, Dad, we'll explain everything later. Right now, I need you both to trust that Olivia and I are handling this together. My father's eyebrows rose in surprise, but I detected a flicker of something like approval in his eyes. Together? That's unexpected. But welcome, he added, squeezing both our hands. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of polite conversations and strategic evasions. Vanessa announced that Robert had been called away on an urgent business matter, apologized for the interruption, and carried on with gracious hostility, every inch the perfect hostess. I stayed by her side, a united front against the whispers and curious glances. When the last guest had departed, Vanessa, our parents, and I gathered in a private dining room to explain the full situation. My mother wept, partly from shock and partly, I suspected, from the public embarrassment that would inevitably follow. My father, however, was unexpectedly supportive. We should have questioned things more 10 years ago, he said, looking at me with regret in his eyes. The way Robert swept in and changed all our lives, it never sat right with me, but I didn't want to rock the boat. You chose sides, I said, the hurt still evident in my voice. We did, he acknowledged. And I will always regret that. The next morning, while Vanessa met with her attorney, I returned to my hotel to find 3 missed calls from Jasmine Torres, and a text message. Robert is trying to access the offshore accounts. You need to act fast. I immediately called the contact at the SEC that Jasmine had provided, explaining the situation and forwarding the documentation. By noon, a freeze had been placed on all of Blacktecker's financial accounts and Robert's personal assets pending investigation. The following days unfolded in a whirlwind of legal meetings, press statements, and family discussions. Robert, cornered and desperate, attempted to flee the country but was detained at LAX. The evidence against him was overwhelming, not just the fraud involving my investment and the misappropriation of company funds, but a pattern of financial deception that stretched back years. Vanessa filed for divorce immediately, securing an emergency order for sole custody of the children and exclusive use of their primary residence. The media frenzy was intense, but mercifully brief, another tech CEO scandal in a world that had grown accustomed to them. Through it all, Vanessa and I began the slow, painful process of rebuilding our relationship. It wasn't easy. 10 years of hurt couldn't be erased by a single night of shared crisis. But each conversation, each difficult acknowledgement of past wrongs, formed a tentative bridge between us. 1 month after the disastrous anniversary party, Robert accepted a plea deal that would send him to federal prison for 7 years. The board of Blacktech appointed an interim CEO and began the process of restructuring the company. My investment was returned with interest, though the legal battle for Vanessa to secure her share of their marital assets continued. 6 weeks after the confrontation, Vanessa called me with an unexpected request. Would you consider moving back to Los Angeles? The kids need stability right now, and having their aunt nearby would help. What about your stability? I asked. Are you sure you want me that close after everything? Her laugh was soft, genuine. Honestly, I think I need my big sister more than I've ever been willing to admit. It wasn't an easy decision. My life in San Francisco was established, my business thriving. But as I considered her request, I realized that the anger and bitterness that had driven me away from Los Angeles for so long had finally begun to dissipate. I'll think about it, I promised. And I meant it. 3 months after the anniversary party confrontation, I found myself sitting in a real estate agent's office in Santa Monica, signing the lease on a small, but charming bungalow just 15 minutes from Vanessa's house. I hadn't planned to move so quickly, but when one of my largest clients, a tech startup focused on ethical AI, opened a Los Angeles office and asked if I would consider relocating to handle their account in person, it felt like the universe was aligning in favor of the change. My reintroduction to Vanessa's children, my niece and nephew, was awkward at first. Emma, 12 and precocious, regarded me with suspicion, aware that my presence coincided with her family's upheaval. 9-year-old James was more openly curious, bombarding me with questions about where I'd been all his life and why I suddenly mattered now. Your mom and I had some grown-up problems to work through, I explained during our first real conversation, careful not to vilify either of their parents. But I've always been your aunt, and I've always cared about you, even from far away. Dad says you're the reason he's in trouble, Emma said bluntly during my second visit, her eyes challenging me to deny it. Your dad made choices that got him into trouble, I replied gently. I just made sure those choices came to light. She considered this, then nodded with a maturity beyond her years. Mom says the same thing. That everyone is responsible for their own actions. Your mom is very wise, I said, surprised by the surge of affection I felt for my sister in that moment. Building a relationship with the children was just one aspect of the complicated new reality we were navigating. Vanessa was dealing with the practical and emotional aftermath of her marriage's implosion, managing the family's significantly reduced finances, fielding questions from friends and associates, and supporting the children through regular visits to their father at the minimum security prison, where he was serving his sentence. Professionally, she found herself at a crossroads. Having been primarily a socialite and corporate wife for a decade, her resume was sparse, but her network was extensive. After several weeks of consideration, she surprised everyone by enrolling in a paralegal certification program. I want to understand what happened to us from a legal perspective, she explained when I questioned her choice. And I want to help other women who find themselves blindsided by financial infidelity. Watching my sister reinvent herself was both inspiring and humbling. The vapid, status-obsessed woman who had mocked my single status and modest lifestyle was gone, replaced by someone more grounded, more authentic, and far more resilient than I had given her credit for being. Our relationship evolved slowly, often awkwardly. We weren't the same people who had grown up sharing secrets and clothes. Too much had happened, too many years of estrangement and hurt. But we were finding a new way to be sisters, one based on honesty rather than competition, on supporting each other rather than undermining. 6 months after my return to Los Angeles, Vanessa's divorce was finalized. She received the family home, primary custody of the children, and a settlement that, while substantial, was far less than she would have received had Robert not siphoned away so much of their assets. The company shares she retained provided a modest income, though Blacktecher's value had plummeted following the scandal. That evening, she invited me over for dinner after the children were in bed. We sat on her back patio, sharing a bottle of wine and watching the stars emerge over the canyon. I never thanked you properly, she said after a comfortable silence. For what you did at the anniversary party. I took a sip of my wine. I'm not sure thanks are in order. I didn't exactly handle it gracefully. She laughed softly. Maybe not. But you did something I couldn't do myself. You forced me to see the truth I'd been avoiding for years. She turned to look at me directly. I was so caught up in maintaining the image of a perfect life that I couldn't admit how broken it actually was. That's what happens when you build a life on someone else's foundation, I said, then winced at how judgmental it sounded. Sorry, that came out wrong. No, you're right, Vanessa replied, surprising me. I built my identity around being Robert's wife, having Robert's money, living Robert's life. I never stopped to figure out who I was apart from him. I studied my sister's profile in the dim light. And now? Do you know who you are now? She smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. I'm getting there. I'm Vanessa Matthews again, not Vanessa Blackwell. I'm Emma and James's mother. I'm a student, a friend, a daughter. She reached across the table to squeeze my hand. A sister. And for the first time in a very long time, I'm actually proud of who I'm becoming. My throat tightened with unexpected emotion. I'm proud of you too, Van. We fell silent again, the childhood nickname hanging between us like a bridge to a past that suddenly felt less distant. What about you? She asked eventually. Are you dating anyone? I laughed. Subtle segue. I'm serious. You're smart, successful, gorgeous. Please tell me you haven't sworn off relationships because of what happened with Robert. The question caught me off guard. I had dated occasionally over the years, but never allowed anyone to get truly close. I haven't sworn off relationships exactly. I've just been cautious. Too cautious, Vanessa diagnosed with sisterly bluntness. You built walls, Liv. I get why, but at some point, you have to decide if protecting yourself from hurt is worth missing out on the good stuff too. Coming from anyone else, the advice might have irritated me. But from Vanessa, who had learned this lesson the hardest possible way, it carried weight. Maybe you're right, I conceded. But my business keeps me busy, and now I have a niece and nephew to spoil. Romance isn't exactly a priority. Vanessa's eyes sparkled with mischief. Funny you should mention that. Remember David Keller from college? He moved back to LA last year after his divorce. He asked about you when I ran into him at Emma's school function. I groaned. Are you seriously trying to set me up right now? What are sisters for? She replied innocently. Besides, he always had a crush on you. Said you were the smarter, more interesting Matthew's sister. Now I know you're making this up. Only one way to find out. She grinned, looking younger and more carefree than I'd seen her in years. As the evening wore on, our conversation drifted to childhood memories, shared jokes, and the gradual reconnect of two women finding their way back to each other through the wreckage of betrayal and loss. It wasn't perfect, there were still moments of tension, old hurts that flared unexpectedly, but it was real in a way our relationship hadn't been for over a decade. When I left that night, Vanessa hugged me tightly at the door. Thank you, she whispered. Not just for tonight, but for giving me a second chance at being your sister. I hugged her back, surprised by how natural it felt. We are giving each other a second chance, I corrected gently. And maybe that's the silver lining in all of this. As I drove home along the quiet streets, I reflected on the strange journey that had brought us to this point. A decade earlier, I had lost my fiancé to my sister and thought my life was over. Now, I had reclaimed not just my financial investment, but something far more valuable, my family, my sense of justice, and most importantly, my own power. Robert had stolen years from both of us in different ways. But the future, uncertain and imperfect as it might be, was finally, truly our own. 1 year after the anniversary party that changed everything, I stood in my office at Matthews Digital Ethics, looking out at the Los Angeles skyline as the late afternoon sun bathed the city in golden light. My business had not just survived the relocation, but thrived, expanding to a team of 12 employees and a client roster that included some of the most innovative tech companies in Southern California. The $4.5 million I'd recovered from Robert had been partially invested back into my company, allowing me to secure larger contracts and more prestigious clients. The remainder I'd placed in a trust for Emma and James's education, a decision that had brought Vanessa to tears when I told her. "They are my family too," I'd said simply. "And money shouldn't be what divides a family." My phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa, "Court appearance done. Judge approved final restitution plan. Celebrating with kids at Marino's. Join us." I smiled, typing back a quick affirmation. Today had been the final hearing in the civil case against Robert, establishing the payment schedule for the remaining restitution he owed to Vanessa and the children. Though he would remain in prison for several more years, this marked the legal end of his hold over their financial future. As I gathered my things to leave, my assistant knocked on the door. "David Keller is here for your 5 o'clock, she announced with a knowing smile. David and I had been dating for 4 months, cautiously at first, then with increasing comfort, as I allowed myself to trust again. He was different from Robert in every way that mattered, thoughtful rather than showy, secure enough in himself to celebrate my success rather than compete with it, and unfailingly honest even when the truth was difficult. "Tell him I'll be right out," I replied, feeling the pleasant flutter of anticipation that still surprised me. At 36, I hadn't expected to feel those butterflies again, had almost convinced myself I was better off without them. David was chatting easily with my team when I emerged, his presence natural and unassuming in my professional space. When he saw me, his face lit up with genuine pleasure. It was that authenticity, more than anything, that had gradually dismantled my defenses. "Ready for dinner?" he asked, offering his arm with a playfulness that made me smile. "Change of plans, actually. Vanessa just finished her court appearance and wants to celebrate with the kids at Marino's. I told her we'd join them." "Perfect," he agreed without hesitation. "I've been craving their tiramisu anyway." His easy acceptance of my family's place in our relationship was another quality I treasured. He had his own complicated history, an ex-wife who had left abruptly, 2 teenage daughters he shared custody of, and understood that love wasn't just about the couple, but about the constellation of relationships that surrounded them. At the restaurant, Vanessa waved us over to a corner booth where she sat with Emma and James. At 13, Emma was already showing signs of the beauty that had defined both Matthew's sisters, though her serious nature reminded me more of myself at that age. James, 10 and energetic, was devouring breadsticks with the single-minded focus of a growing boy. "Aunt Liv," he called out, mouth full. "Mom won against Dad again." "James," Vanessa corrected gently, "it wasn't about winning. It was about making sure everyone is treated fairly." I slid into the booth beside my nephew, David taking the seat across from me. "So it went well?" I asked. Vanessa nodded, her expression both relieved and determined. "The judge approved the full restitution plan. Robert's assets from the offshore accounts will be liquidated and placed in a trust for the children, and he'll make monthly payments to me for 5 years after his release." "That's great news," David said sincerely. "Financial closure makes a huge difference." As a financial advisor, who specialized in helping divorced women rebuild their economic lives, he understood better than most the importance of this milestone. Emma, who had been quietly observing the adults, spoke up. "Does this mean we are done talking about Dad at dinner?" The question, delivered with teenage directness, made us all pause. Vanessa reached over to squeeze her daughter's hand. "We are not going to pretend Dad doesn't exist, Em. He's still your father, and you'll continue your regular visits. But yes, the legal battles are finally over. Good, Emma declared. Because I got the lead in the school play, and no one's even asked about that. The conversation shifted then, to Emma's role as scout in To Kill a Mockingbird, James's upcoming soccer tournament, and Vanessa's news that she'd been offered a full-time position at the law firm, where she'd been interning since completing her paralegal certification. Watching my sister with her children, I was struck by how much she had grown in the past year. The woman who had once defined herself by her husband's wealth and status had transformed into someone far more substantial. A dedicated mother, a conscientious professional, a true friend. The betrayal that had nearly destroyed her had instead revealed a strength neither of us had known she possessed. After dinner, while the kids were occupied with dessert, Vanessa pulled me aside. "I have something to show you," she said, unlocking her phone and pulling up an email. "I wasn't going to mention it tonight, but, well, see for yourself." It was from Claire Winters, Robert's former girlfriend. The subject line read simply, "Apology. You're in contact with her?" I asked, surprised. Vanessa shook her head. She reached out after the story broke in the press. She claims Robert told her I knew about their relationship, that we had an understanding. She believed she was the one he was going to build a future with. "Just like he told you about me," I observed quietly. "Exactly. History repeating itself." Vanessa took her phone back, scrolling through the email. "She's moved back to Oregon, trying to rebuild her life too. In a strange way, I feel a connection to her, another woman Robert manipulated for his own purposes." I studied my sister's face, searching for signs of the bitterness I would have expected. Finding none, I asked, "How do you do that? How do you find compassion instead of hatred?" Vanessa considered the question thoughtfully. "I spent too many years being defined by my relationship with Robert, first as the woman who stole him, then as his trophy wife, finally as his victim. I'm done letting him dictate who I am or how I feel." She smiled, a smile of genuine peace. "Besides, hating her would be letting him win again. And I'm done letting Robert Blackwell win anything in my life." Back at the table, David was entertaining the kids with stories from his recent camping trip with his daughters, who were spending the week with their mother. The easy rapport he'd established with Emma and James was yet another reason my heart had opened to him despite my initial reservations. As we prepared to leave the restaurant, Vanessa pulled me into a tight hug. "1 year down," she whispered. "Thank you for standing by me through all of it." "Sisters," I replied simply, the word carrying all the weight of our complicated history and newfound connection. Later that evening, David and I walked along the beach near my bungalow, the September air still warm enough for bare feet in the sand. We'd fallen into a comfortable routine of spending weekends together, though we maintained separate residences, both of us cautious about rushing into cohabitation after our respective experiences. "Your sister looks happy," he observed as we watched the waves roll in. "More settled than when I first met her." "She is," I agreed. "We both are." He took my hand, interlacing our fingers. "You know, when we reconnected at Vanessa's New Year's party, I never imagined we'd end up here. You were so guarded, so determined to keep everyone at arm's length." I laughed softly. "Can you blame me? My last serious relationship ended with my fiancé marrying my sister." "Fair point." He stopped walking, turning to face me. "But I'm glad you took the risk again. With me." The sincerity in his eyes made my chest tighten with emotion. "So am I." "I have something for you," he said, reaching into his pocket. "It's not what you might think, so don't panic." He pulled out a small velvet box, and despite his warning, my heart rate accelerated. When he opened it, however, I saw not a ring but a key. "It's to my house," he explained. "Not a marriage proposal, not yet. Just an invitation to come and go as you please. To have a space that's yours in my home, the way I've found a space in yours." The gesture, Thoughtful, unrushed, respecting my need for independence while still moving us forward, brought unexpected tears to my eyes. "Thank you," I said, taking the key. "It's perfect." As we continued our walk, I reflected on the strange, circuitous path that had led me to this moment of quiet happiness. 10 years ago, I had believed losing Robert was the worst thing that could happen to me. I couldn't have imagined that the betrayal would eventually lead to reclaiming myself, rebuilding my relationship with my sister, and opening my heart to a love far more authentic than what I had lost. The universe had a peculiar sense of justice, it seemed. Robert, who had manipulated and betrayed us both, had lost everything: his freedom, his wealth, his power. And Vanessa and I, the women he had pitted against each other, had found in each other the family connection we had nearly destroyed. There was a certain poetry to it all, a reminder that while karma might take its time, the scales eventually balance. Not in the ways we expect or demand, but in the quiet, profound ways that matter most. As the sun set over the Pacific, casting long shadows across the sand, I felt a sense of completion. The story that had begun with heartbreak and betrayal had come full circle to healing and new beginnings. The wounds would always be part of our history, the scars evidence of what we had survived. But they no longer defined us or limited what we could become. And isn't that the greatest revenge of all? Not just to survive betrayal, but to thrive in its aftermath. To build something stronger, more authentic, and ultimately more beautiful than what was lost. That night, as David and I stood watching the stars emerge over the ocean, I made a silent promise to myself, to keep moving forward, to keep my heart open despite its scars, and to never again allow someone else's betrayal to define my worth or limit my future. Some might call it forgiveness. Others, wisdom. I simply called it living, fully, authentically, and on my own terms at last. Wow, what a journey we've been on together. I'm curious, have you ever experienced a situation where family betrayal eventually led to unexpected growth or healing? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of karma and redemption, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for more real-life dramas with surprising twists. Share this video with someone who might need a reminder that sometimes the worst betrayals can lead to the best new beginnings. Thank you so much for watching my story. I'm grateful for each and every one of you who stayed until the end. Until next time, remember that sometimes life's biggest setbacks are just setting you up for an even better comeback.